I'm the bad guy. I'm the
So week 4 is in the books in the NFL, and once again, it was another absolutely crazy weekend with tight games. There were shocks. There was potential teams throwing away their season already. We're going to break it all down for you again at Across the Gridiron. And as always, I'm joined by your friend and mine, the man, the myth, the legend, who is today, right now, recording this with me rather than spending time with his wife on her birthday. Eddie, my friend, you're a true professional. How are you doing? How did you enjoy this weekend?
Weekend was good. And let's just add this. The wife has had a terrific birthday. The weekend was great. We had some good time together with the kids. So it was a birthday celebration that started early. So this is like the climax.
So I assume a lot. I assume a lot of that weekend, fun weekend, was actually staying at home watching the NFL, though, wasn't it? Did you make her and your kids stay up to watch Cowboys game?
No, well, actually, it turned out that the NFL games happen quite late on Sundays. So we had pretty much had the weekend to ourselves, and then Sunday, I did watch some of the games, and I have to admit, the Cowboys game, I was dreading, and we're going to talk a lot about that. But before we do that, guys, welcome to the show, and we appreciate all of you for watching. And whether you're Team Cowboys or Team Packers or Team Please Just Make My Fantasy score 60 points, we're glad that you're here. And don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button and ride with us. So let's go.
Absolutely. Well, look, I suppose, like on a normal NFL podcast, the only place to start would probably be the Chiefs and the Ravens game, but not an Across the Gridiron. Because this is Cowboys Corner. This is the Eddie Equo show right about now. So let's just go straight into it. Eddie, that Cowboys game was a bit of fun, wasn't it? How's your heart? How's the angina? Are you come down yet? Are you still flying high?
Listen, this team will not cease to shock me in equal measure. Shock and disappoint at the same time. And I don't know whether it was disappointing. I think like this game, I wasn't expecting much. So I had gone in with very low expectation. I expected a pounding of immense proportions. I have flashbacks to, the playoff games that the Green Bay Packers came in and absolutely smashed it. I think we were like 26-0 or something like that, by halftime in that game. And Green Bay has been a notorious hunting villain for the Cowboys, even back to the days of Aaron Rodgers. The dares, catch, no catch, the Mason Crosby, unbelievable field goal that, circled all around the universe before it went through. So, and then of course, what did we do? We go ahead and get Micah Parsons, the green and gold uniform. And I'm thinking to myself, like, what's the worst that could happen, right? Micah Parsons comes in and beat us, takes our lunch, and goes away. And there was a part of me that obviously I want the Cowboys to win every game that they play. But there was also a part of me that I didn't want Jerry Jones to be proved right, because we know that he isn't. We know that trading away Micah Parsons was a horrible mistake. So if the Cowboys beat the Green Bay Packers, Jerry Jones would have been taking a victory lap, literally just saying, well, you see what I'm saying? And he still couldn't help himself. He still took shots at Micah Parsons after the game. And the class guy that Jerry Jones is, not petty at all. But this game was a game for no defense. The Dallas Cowboys cannot cover, anyone. And basically, they just keep getting attacked the same way. Every quarterback just comes in and just looks supreme. Jordan Love comes in, 3 touchdowns, 330 something yards. He was like throwing deep, passes all around the pitch. And honestly, every time the Cowboys, scored, a touchdown, just waiting for, the Green Bay Packers to return and score a touchdown, because it was just like, okay, how much time is left on the clock after the Cowboys score? Is there enough time for Green Bay Packers to score? If the answer is yes, okay, just wait for the Green Bay Packers to score, because it was inevitable. It was almost like Thanos. Um, that Dak Prescott, I don't know if he can do anything more. I have to say though, this game, made me have a lot more respect for Dak Prescott. CeeDee Lamb not in the game, and Josh Pickens, he wasn't afraid to go to Josh Pickens, and he went to him a number of times in this game. And it reminded me of back in the day when Dak Prescott just came into the league, where he had the likes of Des Bryant, he had Witten, Jason Witten, Cole Beasley, and he was always just getting the ball just to anyone, right, to make a play. And he did that, to good effect. The trouble is that defense is god awful. It's just horrible, right? And again, this just looked like the Giants type of game, where in the second half, both teams were trading leads. You score, I score. You score, I score. And it was like, okay, everything you do, I just match it. If you score a touchdown, I score a touchdown. If you score a field goal, I score a field goal. And that's how we got 40-40. This is ridiculous. I can't think of another game that has been a tie that has ended with that amount of points. 40-40 is ridiculous. To have a team concede that many points, it's just crazy.
I mean, it's an absolute. I mean, look, for the fans, certainly for the neutral fans, it's fantastic entertainment. So we can't do that. I mean, if there were 40-40 games every week, I mean the NFL is already one of the pinnacles in sport, but 40-40 would be some fantastic entertainment to watch. But you're right. I mean, Dallas's defense is poor. I mean, one of the sort of key stats for me, and I know we're not massive sort of stat advocates or wizards on across the gridiron, but the thing for me, and again, you can look at this in two ways. You can either look at it, this is great at Green Bay's standpoint, but it's really poor at Dallas, and that's the third down efficiency. So Green Bay's third down efficiency, I was pulling up here, was 10 out of 14, right? So they had 14 third down attempts, and they were able to get the first down 10 times. Now you compare that to Dallas's, which is 4 in 11, right? So it just shows to me, you can look at it two ways, that either Green Bay are being really strong on third down as an offense, really strong at getting it done, or just Dallas is just too weak. They're just too weak, and they're letting too many crucial plays go. And look, I know it's all ifs and buts and all and whatnot, but if they had been more resolute on some of those third downs, it might not have got to space where we've got a tie in the first case.
I mean, if the Dallas Cowboys had any form of decent defense, they would have won this game, right? I mean, when Josh Pickens, catches that 28-yard touchdown, towards the end of the game, you're thinking that's it, right? Other teams, you score with a few seconds left, in the game, you're thinking, yeah, that's done. It is done. For the Packers to go down the field and just score shortly after that, it's just embarrassing. I mean, I don't know whether the Dallas Cowboys, or the team we're going to talk about soon, is competing for having the worst defense, in the league, because they're certainly, making a good case for it. I don't feel it's the talent of the players. I don't feel like those players have become bad overnight, because there's largely, other than Micah Parsons, this is largely, a good proportion of the players that were there last season that are still there. So you ask the question, as to, why do they look so bad? With Micah Parsons gone. And you had Eziraku, the rookie, he had a few plays there, but it's the secondary. The secondary is the problem, and everyone is taking advantage on it, and they're saying, "Stop us if you can." Until the Dallas Cowboys can show that, they can cover, players that are running deep. Everyone that's going to play Dallas Cowboys are going to do that. And sometimes the players are just wide open. I'm just like, why are you so wide open? What is going on? Cowboys are bad. Listen, this is just going to be a ride like this till the end of the season. I have no confidence in picking them at all to win any game. I don't care who they're playing. I think they will make everyone look good with that defense. And it's a question is, can Dak, keep up? I mean, you're expecting Dak to play a perfect game every single game. That's just not unheard of. Even Lamar Jackson doesn't have to do that. Patrick Mahomes doesn't have to do that. Look at the Eagles. Jalen Hurts definitely doesn't have to do that. But the team elevates, the quarterback as well, and make them win games. I don't think the Cowboys can do that.
No, no. When you've got defense giving up so many points, there's no margin for error with the offense. And look, both quarterbacks in the game on Sunday were excellent. Love for Cowboy and Prescott for Dallas. Sorry, can't get my words out now. Love for Green Bay and Prescott for Dallas were both exceptional. Pickens had a game of his career. What I thought was funny, there was a lot of talk obviously about Micah Parsons, but he was pretty much anonymous in that game. He was pretty much a non-factor until the final play at the end when he got his one sack. That probably that probably stopped. That would have stopped Prescott, scrambling for a touchdown run himself, and turned the game, or he certainly kept the game for Green Bay to get a tie, which they will probably come away thinking we've played badly. For them, they didn't play well, but are able to score 40 points and come away with a tie. So they will be sort of counting their chickens. But anyway.
They will be feeling deflated after that game. I think Green Bay will feel like that was a loss. The Dallas Cowboys might feel like that was a win, because I think everyone expected them to be awful.
True.
And this is what Micah Parsons, he even said in his post-game conference, this is why they brought me in, to make that one play. That play that stopped Dak Prescott from getting into the end zone is why you have a Micah Parsons, right? That stops you from losing a game. The Cowboys don't have that. They don't have anyone in defense that is able to make a game-saving play, and just give you that edge, just win a game. They don't have that, and there's going to be lots of times this season that you're going to need your defense to come up short. We already know that 2/3 of the Dallas Cowboys, well, not 2/3. We know that our Cowboys offense can score points. They've shown that, right? In 2 occasions now, they've caught bucket loads of points, right? We know that they've got a phenomenal kicker, right? So if they get anywhere across the midfield, that's at least 3 points. But they don't have defense, and the special teams is not really good, So, teams, end up having good field positions against the Dallas Cowboys. So when you have a bad defense like that, you need to be pinning teams, special teams, to like the 2-yard line, 3-yard line, 5-yard line. Let them drive the ball, from inside the 10, all the way to the end zone. Now, having said that, though, considering that players just throw bombs at the Cowboys, that might not make any difference. They could, in one play, be down in the other end zone because Cowboys don't know how to cover. But at least make it difficult.
Yeah, we're looking at every passing week. It makes the whole idea of trading Micah Parsons to make your defense better seem like even more ludicrous decision. by the Cowboys. But look, let's move on. 40-40, first tie game in the season. Maybe the only tie game in the season. You don't get a lot of those in the NFL. But
No.
I haven't watched a highlight. I'm going to be honest. I haven't watched the highlights for this game yet. And the reason why on YouTube, they were 30 minutes long. It just showed how much was to take in. Every other game was about like 10, 15 minutes or so, but this one half an hour. I thought, oh God, I don't have that much time. But what I did watch, let's move on to our next game. I did watch the highlights for our next game, and again, another heavyweight clash. This was the Baltimore Ravens and the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, this game obviously ended 37-20 in favor of Kansas City. They move on to 2-2, so they're back to the 0.5. Ravens, on the other hand, moved to 1-3. The first time they have been this behind for a long time. And to make matters worse, is that they lost. And they lost
Lamar.
Jackson. They lost Lamar. I think it was in the third quarter they lost him, and Cooper Rush came in as backup. And my God, did that change the offense there? So look. The question in this is less about Kansas City, because Kansas City obviously they played well. Having Worthy back in the side made a difference. Mahomes looked a lot more protected. You had Travis Kelce picked up a few good yards, but for me that's not the story. The story is Baltimore. Now I'm going to ask you a quick question. Look, the Ravens have had a terrible start to the season, and in terms of the games they have played some heavyweight games. They have played Super Bowl contenders. Or 3 Super Bowl contenders already, and they've lost them all. Is their season close to being over?
Do you know what? I'm not going to say their season is over yet, because it's only 4 games, right? You still got a lot of the season to play, so it's a bit too early, but it's looking close. It's looking close, I have to say. I mean, they are at that age where you're like, yeah. I know we kind of slammed Bengals and said their season was over, because once Burrow went out, you were like, well, I can't see anything. I mean, Cooper Rush has shown that he can be a capable quarterback. He showed that in Dallas, when Dak Prescott was injured, and he still won quite a bit of games. Although, actually, this might actually be a revelation of maybe how good Mike McCarthy was, if the Ravens kind of get a tune out of Cooper Rush. Now that Lamar might be on the sidelines for at least a couple of weeks. I don't know if this game was much about the Ravens or it was more about the Chiefs. I think the Chiefs were like, don't forget about us. I think it was almost like that was the theme song playing in the Chiefs' head, going to this game. People are beginning to forget who the Chiefs are. They're beginning to forget that they are perennial, playoff teams, perennial Super Bowl participants and winners. And I think they must be feeling like people are not giving them a lot of respect, because they certainly played in this game like they demanded that respect. The respect of, we are the Chiefs, we are bloody good, and you need to give us, the credit that we deserve. And there's something that happens to Patrick Mahomes, happens to the Chiefs when they play their so-called rivals in the AFC. It almost brings out the best in them, whether it's Josh Allen they play or it's Lamar Jackson that they play. Something about those games always bring out the best in the Chiefs. And Mahomes came out firing in this game. 4 touchdowns. He was sharp, in the pocket. He was sharp on the move. Just basically, and when it's almost like, like when we watch our game, and we always talk about teams that press, right? And you have the first couple of players, that go and press, the back line or the defense. And then, someone starts to press, and then everyone kind of joins into the press. And of course, the likes of Manchester City are always very good at it. Arsenal are very good at it. It's almost like the Kansas City Chiefs offense almost signals to the rest of the team the special teams and defense, we're going for it in this game, right? We're going to put our legs on their throat and we're going to choke them out. And then everyone just elevates, the special teams, starts to play well. The defense starts making plays, and you're just like, wow, they can almost kind of pull everyone, into, a high performance. And that's exactly what they did in this game against the Ravens. So I think that the Chiefs is sort of saying to people here, we're still there. I still think that they've elevated themselves for this game. I want to see what they do against teams that are not as good as the Ravens, right? I mean, people could argue that the Ravens are not good in terms of the defense, but I thought that the Ravens offense would show a lot more than what they showed, in this game. So you could clearly see that the Chiefs were motivated for this game and they played like it. Now, the question for the Chiefs is, can they do this again for another team that maybe are not their rivals? And for the Ravens is, what's life going to be without Lamar? How is that going to affect them? Can they hang on? They are in a very difficult division now, but I think things have been made slightly easier with the Bengals, with the way things are going for the Bengals. So, I think the winner in all of this is the Steelers. I think they're looking at this division and thinking, this is our division now. This is our division to lose.
Without question. I think the Steelers are our favourites in that. And I think that I appreciate what you were saying about, let's look at Kansas City. That the Chiefs play well. As I mentioned, Xavier Worthy comes back and makes a difference. Mahomes probably enjoyed his most productive game of the season. But for me, something's not right in Baltimore. Something's not right with the Ravens. They have. I'm just seeing if I can find what we've got. So they've allowed 133 points so far, which is the most in the franchise history through the first 4 weeks, and they rank last by a long way in passing yards per game and touchdowns allowed per game. Now, again, what we've talked about, they have played 3 Super Bowl contenders. So they've had a tough start to the season as a team that they've played. But if you're going in and you've at the end of the season, you have got coaches and senior players saying things like, we are not a good football team at the moment, and we've got to get this fixed, and we've got to go back to the drawing board, right? They are 3 sort of comments that came out at the end of this game. I think by Harbour said one. I think King Henry said one. So there is something clearly not right. And you're right what you say about Cooper Rush. He's been a good quarterback, but he's a very different quarterback. The offense completely changes from Jackson to Rush, because you've got, Lamar Jackson is obviously known for his mobility in the pocket and breaking and running, where obviously Cooper Rush is generally more of a pocket quarterback, right? So it all changes. And obviously we don't know what the full diagnosis is on Jackson's injury. He could be out for weeks. He could be out for months. And he's sort of, I think is it hamstring? He's pulled.
Yeah, they've talked about hamstring, and I don't know what that looks like, but I remember Dak Prescott had a hamstring injury, last season, and I think his own came clean off the bone, sort of that. They had to have surgery to kind of get it back, and I guess from our football here, usually hamstring, you get a minimum of 2 weeks. If
I was going to say minimum 4 weeks if it's and for someone like Lamar as well, who is so mobile, right? You can't be mess around with a hamstring. But I worry about the Ravens now. And the reason why I ask if the season is over, because yes, they're going to have they're going to have an easier run of games throughout the season. We are only 4 weeks in, but they're giving themselves no margin for error. Again, they've averaged 11 wins a season, right? So in order to do that, they've got to win another 10 just to get that average up. And
but I would say the only thing that might be helping them is that there is no one in the AFC that is just clearly above everybody else, right?
I think the Bills might argue a case on that.
Yeah, I mean, the Bills have had some close games, and of course, the Bills have been winning, right? So, but you need 7 spots to get into the playoffs, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, out of that 7, I'm looking at, okay, let's say the Bills aside, so they've got 1, right?
Mm-hmm.
They've got 1 spot. There's 6 more spots, and you can't look at everybody else. We thought the Chargers were on a roll, and then they go and lay an egg. We thought Cincinnati were going to be, contenders, and now they've lost Burrow. And then you look at, the Jets, the Patriots, you don't know if they're really good or not, because one game they look nice, another game they don't. The Colts seem to have come back to earth, as well. Texans are a bit Jekyll and Hyde, so you look all across that AFC and you're thinking they could squeeze in even with a 7 spot,
Oh, yeah. I mean, look, I'm sure they could. I was probably being slightly facetious with my question. I think the biggest winner here, as you said, are the Steelers. Obviously, they picked up a win in Ireland against the Vikings. They progressed to 3-1.
Yeah.
The Baltimore level with Cleveland on a 1-3 record. Bengals, as we know, are probably going to struggle in the wake of Burrows being out. They're going to need him back and quickly. Yeah. But look, I think this was a worrying game for Baltimore. They need to go back to base. But what we do know is they do have the quality to fix it. Yeah. So let's move on to so the final game we're going to cover in a bit more detail. And I mentioned at the beginning, it was a weekend of a couple shocks, no more than this one. And it was the New York Giants getting the first win of the season against a team that we have talked up quite a lot about. We've talked up quite a lot, I should say, in the first few weeks of the season in the LA Chargers. Is it simple to say? Is it too simple to say that actually the main reason or the biggest differential in this is the fact that Jaxson Dart made his first start? He came in to replace Russell Wilson, who hasn't played well for a couple of games, and Dart impresses. It gives the team some energy. One of their players, I can't remember who it was, came out at the end of the game and said, "This was just fun. It was fun to play in this team yesterday, and it hasn't been fun for a while." A 21-18 victory. It was tight. Only a field goal in it, but this was a big shock. We didn't even put this in our predictions because we assumed it was going to be too obvious.
Yeah. I know.
And so, I mean, let's look at some of Dart's numbers. For his debut. Again, it wasn't groundbreaking numbers. It was solid, if not spectacular. He completed 13 out of 20 attempts, threw for 111 yards, 1 touchdown, and no interceptions. But again, fairly solid. What did he reckon to that performance? Did you see it coming, first of all?
No. I don't think there's anyone that would have seen that coming. I mean, you would have thought that, based on how the Giants played the Cowboys, that they would have some kind of life. But then they played the Chiefs, and then it was like, yeah, the Giants are what the Giants are, right? So it was almost like the Chiefs game was the equalizer. It was almost the leveler, right? Let's just, pack it, right? That, Peyton Manning, impersonation by Russell Wilson in the Cowboys game wasn't going to last, right? So you kind of go into this game and you're thinking Chargers have beaten the Chiefs this season. They're going into that game, with a flawless record, with high on confidence. Herbert was playing well, so you're thinking this is going to be easy picking, right? They're not going to play with their food. They're just going to go and do it. And boy, were we wrong. I think Herbert probably played his worst game that I've seen in a long time. He threw 2 interceptions in this game. What the Giants are they are what you consider a trap game, right? A team where you just don't know what you're going to get out of them, but you don't want them to hang around for too long. If you want to play the Giants, they're the kind of team that you've got to put them out of their misery very quickly, because if they hang around and they have hope, they're going to cause you problems. The defense is not bad, but it's not great, but it's capable of doing stuff. You know, you've got Abdul Carter. They've got a few guys there in that backfield that can absolutely go after the quarterback. So Jaxson Dart came in, and you could almost say that this was the kind of perfect game that you wanted him to play. You know, a game where you lean on a running back, a game where you lean on your big time players to make play, and you just don't give the ball away, right? So this is the sort of games that, you know, the turnover battle was going to decide it. If you don't turn over the ball, you're probably going to win the game. And the Chargers turn over the ball, you know, and that is a recipe. You know, if you don't win the turnover battle, everybody always says, you know, you always lose the game. And when your quarterback throws 2 interceptions, it's very, very hard to win a game after that. You know, that being said, I think I don't know what's worse for the Giants. Would they have traded this win to keep Malik Neighbors, you know, back in the squad? Because, you know, he limped off, and I was checking the reports, and he's done for the season.
Is that confirmed now? Because last time I saw, they thought it may be an ACL tear. Is that now confirmed?
Yeah, he's done.
That's
He's done.
That's
He's done
tough.
It's done for the season. I don't see him coming back from an ACL.
Oh no,
this
he might
season.
not even be back. He might not even be back for training camp next season. That
Yeah.
ACL toughs are hard.
Terrible injury. And this was the one shining light, you know, for the Giants, because you always know that he was always going to pop out and he was going to make plays. Excuse me. He was going to make plays for the Giants. I don't know what they're going to do. Who can they trade for? I don't know. It's a player that might consider going to the Giants because they might think, well, I don't think they're going to be any good, you know. So if they trade for a player, it has to be someone that is either. I'm trying to think of, you know, a team that might have a player that they're not using. It has to be someone who's good, but the team has an abundance of riches and they're not using him, or they're gonna have to pay some serious money, you know, to bring somebody in. Either way, it's gonna be interesting how the Giants move on from here. But you know, Jaxson Dart has given them, you know, hope. New York will be buzzing, you know, right now, and we just left to see what's going to happen next.
No, absolutely. I think you're right in terms of the, you know, what they're going to do to replace Neighbors. I think this win makes the Giants more of a positive place to go, purely based on this game. Again, a wide receiver who's maybe not getting a minute itself, so it might look and say, okay, well, you've got Jaxson Dart throwing bombs to me. You know, they look good. They've got an exciting new quarterback. You know, maybe this is where I can go and get some minutes, get some yards, get some touchdowns. But I think the Giants would be foolish, in my opinion, to pay big money and go and get someone. Even though, yes, you know, they're 1-3 now. Talked about with the Ravens. There's no margin for error now. They have to go and have a winning season, right? If they're going to have any chance of making the playoffs. So, which in that division is going to be obviously incredibly tough when you've got the Commanders, you've got the Eagles, and there's another team, but we know they're no good. So it's going to be hard for them to make the playoffs. So at the same time, what you would have thought the common sense thing to do would be not to give away draft picks for the sake of a wide receiver. Whereas actually, that if you kind of accept that this is going to be a losing season for you, right? But you give the head coach that confidence that he's going to be there. Know what? Because you know Drayball was in the hot seat, right? This was a big win for him as it was for the whole organization. But you know, you give them some confidence. Say, right, we are going to give this guy some weapons next season. And I'm not saying tank the season because, you know, let's be honest, you've got to go some way to beat the Titans in the first pick. But you can draft high. You can go and give Dart some weapons next season. I think it would be foolish to trade high. But this is New York. Who knows what they're going to do? So let's move on now to look at some of the other things that we sort of noticed in this week. Again, it was a lot went on this week, but let's start in the city, in the team that you love the most. Let's start with Philadelphia, because again, Philadelphia and the Bills both won again at the weekend. Both move on to 4-0. And again, it's looking pretty ominous for both those two teams. It's looking ominous they're going to be the first seed in both the AFC and the NFC. Would you say?
Yeah.
Smile when you say that, Eddie. Smile. Embrace the Eagles. Fly, Eagles, fly. Come on, embrace the brotherly love.
Honestly, if there is anything as a bad 4-0 team, right, it would be the Philadelphia Eagles.
You're not bitter at all, Eddie. Not bitter at all.
But there is no such thing as a bad. You are what your record says you are, and which Correct. Is really annoying. I mean, the Eagles did it again. Another block punt, which turned into an early touchdown for the Eagles. The Bucs, I don't know. I don't know what they were doing in the first half, because it seemed like they didn't make it out of the dressing room. They played like a team that were unrecognizable. I didn't recognize this Bucs team that was in the first half. The Bucs team that I knew came out in the second half. I don't know what they were doing in the dressing room, in the first half, because nobody came to play in that first half. And by then, the Eagles do what they always do in the second half. They just close shop. Right. It's like, it's like watching the Marino team back in the heyday, where it was like, if Marino's team scores a goal, that's it. you know that you're not going to get into the game. And they're probably going to win by 1-0. Right. And the Eagles have a tendency of closing shop. Now, they had some boneheaded plays, and they let the Bucs in. But like I was saying before we started recording, the Eagles are now have giving me Chiefs vibes, right? In the sense that, something always seems to be weird happening in the team that is playing them. That is always like one play or two plays end up giving the win back to the Eagles, because the Bucs were this close, to reversing the scoreline. Baker Mayfield played his life out. I love Emeka Ibuka. I think he's a real star, and he really contributed to this game. But Baker Mayfield, it's about when you make those plays, and the interception that he threw, so late in the game, that just an absolute killer, right? It's kind of a play that you don't mind having in the first half. You do that in the first half, you kind of get it out of your system. But when you make those plays in the fourth quarter with so many minutes left in the game, that has just got to be killing, demoralizing, for everyone. And that's why they lost. That's really why they lost that game. Like I say, I'm running out of teams to take out these Eagles, right? I paid the Rams, they were no good. Paid the Bucs, they were no good. I don't know who else wants to take my money, but I just can't seem to get rid of this Eagles team.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. To be honest, yeah. I mean, look, it's very different. It felt like the normal, but Eagles absolutely raced ahead, didn't they? In the first half, they were 24-3 up at one point. But when Baker Mayfield, which we've talked about last week, I think he's been great in those sort of tight possessions, sort of those tight games, and those sort of tight moments when he can really bring his team forward. This time they just ran out of steam, and obviously ended up losing 31-25 in the end. And yeah, look, when the going got tough, what Philadelphia did, their defense did stiffen, right? They shut it down. They forced Mayfield into that costly interception on the goal line. And yeah, they move on to 4-0. Just quickly on the Bills, the other 4-0 team, they were in a fairly surprisingly tight game against the winless Saints, but Josh Allen came out to play fourth quarter. They ended up pulling away and won 31-19. So obviously they move on. Another thing that we want to look at, a team who aren't moving on, or certainly not moving on in a positive way, is the Tennessee Titans. Now, we talked about this game in our prediction show when we talked about the two losing teams. You had the Titans and you had the Texans. The Titans we knew were a poor team. Or I thought we knew they were a poor team, but you still bet on them to win for some reason. But they played against the Texans team who have started the season really poorly. But yeah, this one just was not a good day for Tennessee. And I think head coach Callahan into his second season, he's on the hottest of hot seats right now. It doesn't look good for Tennessee, does it? They are the worst team in the league.
Yes, they are the worst team in the league. And they seem like they're working their way nicely to picking over number one overall again in the next head draft. And I don't know, it's going to be between them and the Panthers, who ends up picking up that number one overall. Yeah, the coach is on a hot seat. There's no question about that. I think when you draft the number one draft pick as a quarterback, you have high expectations. You want your franchise to be turned around, right? You want to go from worst to first. That's the sort of thing that you're looking for. You look at it is hard, but that's the sort of expectations that franchises have, right? Because they look at the likes of Bengals, they got Joe Burrow and their lives turned around. You look at CJ Stroud, the Texans, they were going nowhere. They got CJ Stroud and that changed their lives, around. Look at the Commanders, right? They were worse in the division. They got Jaden Daniels and their lives changed around. So, a lot of, teams to be thinking, well, at least even if it's for one season, I want to get that bounce, right? I want to have my franchise looking, like as if they've got a pulse. And it's the complete opposite. Now, I don't know whether it's the coaching, but they've got decent players. Tony Pollard is a good player, and he was making efforts to try and make things happen. The special teams didn't help. The team drove all the way down. Of course, they couldn't get into the end zone, and the kicker misses the goal. The kick, right? And when the team is bad and every aspect of the team doesn't look very good, the fact that you don't score a single point in a game, I mean, it just means that it's not just the offense that is bad. It's not the defense that is bad. It means the special teams is bad because it's not even getting you to a good field position that you can even kick field goals to even get points to the board. So yeah, it doesn't look good for the Titans, I would say.
No, I mean the offense has been an absolute disaster. I mean, look, Cowboys have showed flashes, but everything else has been poor. I mean, they ranked last in points per game, 12.7 points per game. They've just scored 3 touchdowns all season and have the longest third down distance of any offense in football at the moment. That's 8.9 yards. And it's just not looking good. They've now lost 10 straight, dating back to last season. But to be shut out by a struggling Texans team who haven't won a game all season is poor. 26-0 is an absolute annihilation. And this is a Titan organization who pushed out Mike Vrabel out the door, and after they had 4 winning seasons in 6 years. So look, it's a tough gig, being a head coach of any football team. But when you have a record of 3-14 in one season, and as you say, you use that draft pick to bring in a first round quarterback, you then go 0-4, including a shutout and having such a poor offense. It really does not look good for Tennessee Titans at the moment. But let's move on to another one. I think something else that was quite interesting, talking about, with a focus on quarterbacks and teams that we thought were going to be poor, who actually, in this case, have actually done quite well, and that's the Colts. Now they were going into this game with a winning record, surprisingly 3-0, but they threw away a winning record, didn't they? With probably one of the funniest plays of the season. Poor Adonio Mitchell. He'll be having nightmares about this. They were 17-13 up in the third quarter. Just trying to remember who they were playing now, actually. The name escapes me.
And of course, we're playing the Rams.
The Rams, of course, thank you. He done all the hard work, 70-yard run, gets to the goal line, and for some reason puts his arm out, fumbles the ball on the goal line with no one around him for a touchback. And I think that just took the wind completely out of the Colts, and they ended up losing that game. And sometimes as a head coach or as a fan, you see plays like that and you think, oh my God, this is not going to be our day.
Yeah, I mean, he's not going to sleep well, the poor kid, because that is just, he's not going to do that again. There's no.
Oh no.
There's no question about that. Talk about one and done. He's not going to do that again. But the NFL is relentless. It's brutal. It's unforgiving.
No,
I mean, these are professionals. These are I mean, these are like, the best of the best, right? When you're playing the game, and it requires maximum concentration. And I can't even pretend, to understand the amount of effort that it takes to play in the NFL. But when things like that happen, you kind of sort of think, right, okay, this is a very serious game, because he's done all the hard work. He's ran all the way towards the end zone. And just that moment where, and I don't even think there was anyone that close to him, that, he was in danger of, he could have just run into the end zone and then do, what he wanted.
The celebration dance at the end of it.
Yeah, do the celebration dance, and he's gonna learn, because that mistake swung the game. I mean, in hindsight, you look at it and say, if they score that touchdown, they're not losing by the points that they lost, in this game.
No.
So, and the time that he could have scored the touchdown was an important time in the game as well, because that would have given them momentum as well. And look, Daniel Jones played well. I don't think, he was the reason for the loss. He did his job. I think the other parts of the team didn't rise up to the occasion. So yeah, I mean, listen, I've always said that the Colts, I wanted them to lose a game just so that, they don't have the pressure of, being flawless, because sometimes that can just get in the way, right? There's a little bit like, Sam Darnold in the Vikings, as they were piling up the wins, it was getting more and more, and then he cracked, at the time when he wasn't supposed to crack, in the game that he wasn't supposed to do that. So you kind of want, if Daniel Jones is going to feel human again, let him do that early on, and then he can build back, the performances that he's been putting in.
Absolutely. So let's just let's end. Give me 1 minute on the Patriots, Eddie. They won a game. They moved to 2-2. Obviously, we're recording this on a Monday before the Dolphins play the Jets, who are both at the moment 0-3. So one of the teams are going to end up an 0-4. Do we think the Patriots are a lock for this sort of second position? We did in that division. We did say that, between the Dolphins, the Jets, and the Pats, they're all playing for second place. But with the way that Drake May is playing, do you think they're a lock for that second place of a wildcard position? Just give us a quick minute on the Patriots.
Yeah, I think the Patriots are playing complementary football, which is what you need for a quarterback like Drake May. You want him to be efficient. He threw 2 touchdowns. I think he rushed for 1 as well. You've got a defense that is playing well. They were generating pressure, on the Panthers. And the Panthers are a sorry team. No offense to the Panthers, but they're not really good. And then you have special teams, also doing that. There was an 87-yard punt return, I think, for a touchdown. And there was also a 61-yard return in that game too, as well, by the Patriots. So I think the Patriots have done themselves well. They've positioned themselves to take advantage, of the Jets or the Dolphins if they don't wake up. So I think they've got a big shout. I think they've got a big shout of getting that number 2 position. The question is, would that be enough, right, to get into the playoffs, considering the other divisions?
Yeah, I think they're certainly looking. I know it's only 2-2. I know it's early days, but I think they're looking good for having a winning season, which is more that I can say about the Dolphins at the moment. Let's see how tonight's game goes. All right, well, look, I think that's a good place to wrap up. Let's leave it there for week 4. Thank you for going through that with us, and thank you everybody again for joining us, which was again an absolutely mental weekend of football. So please, guys, do the usual: like, share, subscribe, follow. Send us an email, send us a message, send us a tweet, whatever you want to do. You can see some of the details scrolling through the screen right now. Eddie, great recording with you as always. Thank you for your time, and as always, take us home.
Yeah, so week 4 did not disappoint. We had ties, we had blowouts, and we had a debut, for Jaxson Dart. Plus another reminder that special teams could actually flip the season. So it's on to week 5, London games, divisional clashes, and maybe the Cowboys might play some defense.
No.
Not betting on it. But I appreciate you guys rolling with us across the gridiron. Drop your comments, get into the debate as well, and subscribe, more importantly, so you can hear us. And don't forget, we also got a channel on Instagram and on X as well. So follow us across the gridiron, and we'll catch you next week.
I'm the bad guy. I'm the